They said no man ever came back from the White Veil, a stretch of desert so vast and merciless that even vultures avoided its skies. Yet, on a blistering July morning in 1876, a lone figure appeared at the edge of Redwater Gulch. His name was Caleb Harker, a drifter with a weather-beaten face, a dark poncho draped over his shoulders, and a wide-brimmed black hat that hid most of his eyes. He carried nothing but a battered Colt revolver at his side and a small leather canteen tied to his belt. The townsfolk of Redwater paused their work as he passed. Blacksmiths dropped their hammers, women shielding their children's eyes, gamblers at the saloon door frozen mid-drink. Caleb's boots struck the dirt road in a steady rhythm, each step echoing against the silence. No one knew where he had come from, but everyone had heard whispers. They said he had once ridden with a notorious gang along the Rio Bravo before betraying them for reasons no one understood. Others swore he was cursed, that every town he visited ended in fire, death, or vanishing. But the most chilling rumor was that Caleb wasn't walking toward the White Veil to test his fate, he was walking because the desert was calling him back. His poncho flapped like a tattered flag in the wind, and though his face was carved with scars of 100 fights, his eyes carried the weight of something deeper, like he had already seen the end, and was simply marching toward it. The sheriff of Redwater, an old man named Jonah Pike, watched him from the steps of the jailhouse. Pike muttered to himself, "Ain't no man walks into the veil and comes back whole, if he comes back at all." But Caleb didn't stop. He didn't glance at the saloon, the church, or the curious children peering from dusty windows. He simply walked. And with every step toward the horizon, the people of Redwater felt a strange chill, as though the desert had extended its hand and was slowly pulling one of their own into its endless embrace. By the time Caleb reached the edge of town, the sun was already high, beating down on the sand like a hammer. Before him stretched the White Veil, an ocean of blinding dunes that shimmered like molten glass. The heat warped the horizon into strange mirages, shapes of riders without horses, towns without people, rivers that had long since dried to bone. Caleb paused only once, taking a single swallow from his canteen before tightening the strap of his poncho. His boots sank into the sand as he stepped forward, leaving behind the last signs of Redwater and every soul who had watched him go. Behind him, whispers grew. "He's a fool," one man muttered. "He's a ghost already," said another. But a woman in a faded blue dress whispered something different. "The desert's been waiting for him." As Caleb pressed deeper, the White Veil revealed its cruelty. The air shimmered like fire, the dunes shifting with the wind, erasing his footprints as if denying he had ever existed. Hours turned to days, and yet he walked without falter, his figure growing thinner, his shadow stretching longer against the burning sands. At night, when the desert froze under a silver moon, strange sounds carried through the emptiness, spurs jangling when no rider rode, voices calling his name in tones that belonged neither to the living nor the dead. He never answered. He only walked. His revolver stayed heavy at his side, untouched, but his hand often brushed its grip, as though ready for a fight that wasn't against men but against the desert itself. In the shifting sands, he saw things, a gang of riders he once knew, their faces cracked and hollow, their laughter echoing like rattlesnakes. A campfire burning with blue flames. A church bell ringing far away, though no church stood in sight. Whether these were mirages or memories twisted by the desert, Caleb did not know. All he knew was that the White Veil was alive, testing him, pulling him deeper with each step. And still, he never turned back. The third day inside the White Veil stripped Caleb of all sense of time. Sun and moon blurred into a relentless cycle, and the sky seemed less like a dome of heaven and more like an empty lid trapping him inside a coffin of sand. His throat was raw, his lips cracked, and every step pulled grains into his boots until they cut his skin raw. Yet still he walked. At times, he staggered, falling to his knees on dunes so hot they burned through his trousers, but the moment he fell, he felt the desert laughing. The sand hissed like serpents, whispering in voices that sounded like old friends, old enemies, women he had loved, men he had killed. When he pressed his hands into the dunes, they pulsed warm like flesh, as if he was kneeling on the back of something alive. On the horizon, he saw shapes, riders cresting the dunes, dust rising in columns, banners whipping in a wind he could not feel. He reached for his revolver, cocked the hammer, but when he blinked, the riders dissolved into smoke. The desert was mocking him with ghosts. Still, Caleb marched forward, revolver at his side, refusing to let madness claim him. At night, the desert froze, and stars painted the heavens with impossible clarity. Caleb lay on the sand, staring upward, seeing constellations shift and twist into patterns he had never known. A rattlesnake curled near his head once, its rattle shaking in the silence, but it did not strike. Another night, a pack of coyotes circled him, their eyes glowing pale green, but none dared to come closer than a few paces. It was as if the creatures of the desert recognized him, not as prey, not as man, but as something cursed like themselves. By the fifth day, Caleb's body moved on instinct. His mind drifted in and out of fevered dreams where he wandered into towns swallowed by dunes. He saw buildings half buried, saloons tilted sideways, skeletons sitting upright at poker tables, cards still clutched in their bony hands. A church bell rang from beneath the sand, its tolling muffled but steady, and when he tried to find its source, the dunes shifted, burying it deeper. He passed a wagon wheel sticking out from the earth, its wood blackened by flame. Next, he stumbled upon a child's doll half buried, one glass eye staring at him, its cloth body stiff with age and sun. Caleb picked it up, stared for a moment, then dropped it back into the sand. He could feel the weight of every story buried here, as though the desert had swallowed not just people, but their sins, their failures, their last breaths. One night, as the wind howled across the dunes, Caleb dreamed of the Rio Bravo gang, the men he once rode with. In the dream, they sat around a fire, laughing, passing whiskey, their faces illuminated by blue flames. They turned to him and called his name, each voice different, yet the same, Caleb, Caleb, Caleb. He drew his revolver and fired into the dream, but when the smoke cleared, the fire was gone, and so were they. He awoke clutching his gun, fingers still tight on the trigger, and found only silence. But in that silence, he felt the desert watching. The white veil wasn't just endless sand. It was a graveyard, a cathedral, a living thing that tested every soul who entered. And Caleb Harker, whether by curse or by choice, was walking deeper into its heart. By the seventh day, Caleb's canteen was empty, and thirst gnawed at his mind like knives. His tongue swelled, his vision blurred, and his footsteps faltered. Yet in the midst of agony, he saw something no man should ever see in the white veil, a town. It rose from the sand like a mirage. Yet it was too solid, too real to dismiss. Weather-beaten signs swung over crooked storefronts. A saloon door creaked open and shut in the wind. Lanterns glowed faintly in windows, though no one lit them. Caleb stumbled forward, unsure whether he was walking into salvation or damnation. The town's name was painted across a cracked wooden arch, Ash Hollow. He stepped onto its main street, boots sinking into sand that had invaded every corner. Inside the saloon, glasses sat half-filled, untouched for years. A piano stood in the corner, keys yellowed, yet when he passed, one note played itself with a hollow chime. Upstairs, doors hung ajar, shadows moving where no one stood. Caleb touched the bar counter and found it coated in fine dust, yet still damp, as though someone had spilled whiskey only moments before. He moved through Ash Hollow like a man trapped between worlds. In the sheriff's office, a badge lay on a desk, polished and gleaming, though the room itself was rotting. A noose swung gently in the jailhouse corner, its rope new, not frayed by time. On the church steps, he found fresh boot prints leading inside, but when he followed them, the pews were empty, the altar cracked. Only the cross remained, carved of blackened wood, and it seemed to twist as he stared at it, bending into shapes that were not holy. Then came the voices. Low at first, like murmurs under the wind, then louder, echoing through the hollow town. Caleb, they called, dragging his name through every alley, every doorway, every shadow. He drew his revolver, spinning on his heel, firing into windows where figures flickered and vanished. The hammer clicked empty, his bullets wasted on phantoms, yet the voices only grew stronger. They spoke of his past, the men he betrayed at Rio Bravo, the woman he left bleeding in a burning barn, the children who cried as flames took their home. Caleb staggered, clutching his head, shouting into the emptiness, "I ain't yours. You hear me? I ain't." But the desert had already claimed Ash Hollow, and now it was claiming him. Shadows poured from the buildings, stretching long and thin, circling him, their forms twisting into the shapes of those he had wronged. He tried to reload, hands shaking, sweat pouring down his face, but the revolver felt heavier, as though sinking in tar. The last thing Caleb saw before darkness swallowed him was the sheriff's badge on the desk, gleaming brighter than ever, though no light touched it. The badge spun slowly, as if unseen fingers turned it, and in that silent motion, Caleb understood the truth: Ash Hollow was no town. It was the desert's mouth, and he had just walked into its belly. Caleb woke to silence. The town of Ash Hollow had changed overnight. No lanterns burned, no shadows moved, no whispers followed. The buildings stood sharper, cleaner, as though newly built, yet the air carried the weight of centuries. Caleb staggered to his feet, his revolver hanging loose in his hand, and stepped outside. The street was lined with people now, men, women, children, all staring at him with hollow eyes, their faces pale, their skin like parchment. They stood motionless, lining the dusty road like mourners at a funeral. At the far end of the street, a figure waited. A sheriff, tall, broad-shouldered, his star gleaming against a coal-black duster. His face was shadowed beneath the brim of his hat, but Caleb felt his stare burn through him. The sheriff raised one hand and pointed directly at Caleb. In that moment, Caleb knew the truth: the town had not buried its sheriff. The sheriff had buried the town. The crowd parted, whispering as Caleb walked toward the figure, each step echoing louder than the last. His boots struck the earth like drumbeats in a funeral march. The sheriff did not move. Caleb raised his revolver, cocked the hammer, and spoke with a cracked voice: "If you're the devil of this desert, then I reckon you've been waiting on me." The sheriff only smiled. Caleb pulled the trigger. The shot split the silence, but no bullet came. The revolver was empty, as hollow as the town itself. Before he could draw breath, the sheriff's hand closed around Caleb's throat, colder than any winter he had ever known. The sky above darkened, stars snuffed out one by one, until the white veil swallowed everything. When the silence broke, only the sheriff's voice remained, carried on the wind. "The desert don't take lives, boy, it takes souls. And yours is mine now." Ash Hollow vanished with the dawn. No tracks, no bodies, no Caleb Harker. Only the endless sand stretched on, silent as ever, waiting for the next fool to walk into their heart. And so, legend says, the White Veil Desert still whispers Caleb's name at night, carrying his voice across the dunes for those who dare to listen. But his story is just one of many buried beneath the sands of the Old West. If you felt the chill of Ash Hollow's curse tonight, then saddle up, because there are darker tales yet to be told. Subscribe to Wild West Tales and ride with us into more forgotten legends. Don't miss the next story. We've got haunted towns, cursed gold, and outlaws who never stayed dead. And when you're done here, click on the video waiting at the end. It'll drag you deeper into the Wild West shadows than you've ever gone before.